Back in November 1991, community member Paul Glover had started some radical systemic ideas for the Ithaca community. The first of which was Ithaca Hours, which was the development of a local currency to encourage keeping money circulating within the community. Within a short period of time, over 90 small businesses agreed to accept Ithaca Hours as a form of alternative currency. Though not in practice today, I remember Ithaca Hours when I was in university in the area. 6 years later, Paul founded the Ithaca Health Fund, the Ithaca Health Alliance, and the Ithaca Free Clinic with the idea of addressing the issue of healthcare access. The Ithaca Free Clinic, which is the topic of interest today, is a nonprofit that offers thousands of uninsured community members access to integrative healthcare. We spoke with Seven Song, a well-known herbalist in the Ithaca area, about his work there and how the Free Clinic works.
I've been in Ithaca, this town, for about 35 years now.
So the Ithaca Free Clinic, where did that all start?
Paul was thinking, where does Ithaca leak its money to? So where could we keep money? And so he thought the health industry. And so when I saw Paul on the Commons many years ago, and he told me about this idea, and I said, okay, let me be the first person. It was $100, which was a lot of money to me then. But the idea is that we would all pay money into this health plan, and that would go to local providers. So I'm number 0001 of the Ithaca Health Alliance.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah, it was. And then the Ithaca Health Alliance eventually decided, so what's the next step with having a health alliance? And the next step would be to have a free clinic, because Ithaca doesn't have any free clinics. So it's that's why, so Paul has lived in Pennsylvania and Philly for a long time. But that's been a big part of it, so.
And I think I was around here when they still had the Ithaca currency, which you said was Ithaca Hours?
Called Ithaca Hours.
Ithaca Hours. So I remember that because you could use it in all the downtown common spots and all that other type of stuff. And I think that those things are really kind of radical ideas in a way, because, you're saying, okay, well, let's do our own monetary system.
Right.
Or let's keep the money inside, so let's do our own healthcare system. Those are things that people talk about, but they don't really architect and craft and execute on those things. So it's kind of a radical shift. So for you to be 001 to say, okay, let's do this.
001.
001 for however long, how many years ago that was. That's fairly novel, I have to say.
Yeah, well, Paul. So the thing about Paul. So Paul was the gadfly of the Commons, right? He was just constantly getting in people's faces, trying to get more bike trails, just more improvements to Ithaca, kind of the Commons needs. But you're right. Paul, like a lot of people, I've been around people with big ideas forever, including myself, and Paul tended to be able to gather enough people around him, which you have to do, in order to make it happen. So I was just really glad. So that's the Ithaca Health Alliance. So I'm an herbalist, and I've run an herbal school since 1994. Somewhere around 2005, I had a friend saying that she was going to these meetings where they were looking to open up a free clinic. And I just didn't believe her. The idea that an herbalist can be a part of a free clinic in the town that I currently lived in seemed impossible. So anyway, I didn't go for a little while. And then one day I went to the meeting, and it was crazy. It was exactly what she was saying. So basically, it was about 18 of us, and we met. I forget, maybe a year and a half. I joined about 6 months in, and then we did it. Basically, we all divided many subcommittees, many meetings. And I was always on the clinical meeting. So often, one thing is, when people ask me questions, I know a little bit about finances, I know a little bit about rent and things like that. But for me, it's always been on the clinical side of being here. So one thing that's different from me is that I'm an herbalist and I'm unlicensed. So there's no herbalists that are licensed.
Yeah, you don't have a license
there's no
here,
licensing
to practice herbal medicine. It's not a thing here. Maybe in Germany it is, but not here.
And very different, very regulated
in Germany.
I would never have had a school there.
It's kind of a weird thing because, doing herbalism or practicing herbalism, you kind of wonder, you're like, do I want to live in that kind of thing where it's highly regulated, or do I kind of want to just go underneath the surface and be unregulated and do my thing?
I chose number 2. Pretty squarely.
Yeah.
I've taught in the UK and France, and so I never taught in Germany. But in both of those countries, it's highly regulated. In Canada, it's more regulated as well. I'm pointing in some direction.
Yeah.
I mean, north, which is up. The Canadians are up here. One last meeting was a decision, like, should we let herbalists practice? And so all along, like,
And these were other medical professionals, but not herbalists.
So the 18 of us, or however many at this point, were actually pretty varied. There was a couple of CMC, Cayuga Medical Center employees. There was just some people who wanted a free clinic who lived around town. There was a few medical professionals. It was pretty scattered. Like there was a massage therapist or two. There were 3 herbalists at that time.
I mean, it sounds like a great holistic group of people, you know?
It was pretty good. I mean,
like I come here for my massage, my herbalism, my regular checkup, my eye, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people are just community activists, or not like hardcore, but like, I don't know what softcore would be, but really just wanting to see this happen.
Yeah.
So not a lot of medical professionals, a few. So then I started working here. We opened our doors in 2006, and I've been here ever since. I usually just work once a week, sometimes twice a week in winter. I work on Thursdays from like 3 to 7.
And there's not walk-ins, people schedule time.
People have to schedule. We rarely have walk-ins. Mostly we have, so one of the big differences between us and the medical folks here is that we see people for a longer amount of time, right? So if I'm here for 4 hours, the most I can see is 8 people, right? Which is uncommon. That would be a half hour for each person. Whereas some things, the medical people the medical people can see for a quicker, like the doctors, the physician assistants, the registered nurses, they can see people for shorter amounts of time.
Yeah.
But generally, the least we see people is a half hour.
And then do you typically get like return patients? Because when I think about like herbal practice, I think of like, you know, some people take it, you know, every day. It's like part of things. And it's not something that I see separate from, you know, the conventional medicine, you know, if you will. It kind of seems those two things could actually work together.
Well, there's a lot to say to both of those things. So many people don't come back. So the majority, I think about 80% of the people I see have never seen an herbalist before. So the whole thing, like the question and answers we ask, maybe what I look like. I also have 2 students in these 2 chairs when I'm here. Though I ask permission, like, is it okay to have students? But since they're so, like, I wanted to be mentored when I was studying herbal medicine and work in a clinic, but didn't exist. So I'm one of the few herbalists that has this opportunity. So, you know, every year I pick a couple of people and that's it for the year. So the same with many people, you know, they come to see me once and they don't see me again, which makes me not know whether the herbs have helped or not, which is one of the problems.
So there's no, and that's another thing with like a free clinic, like there's no skin in the game in a free clinic.
So I'm going to change that. So I think that is wrong.
Okay.
So so there's a concept that if people don't pay for something, they don't have skin in the game, or they don't have really, there's no reason to come back. I haven't found that. As being here, I've had more repeat people than anywhere I've ever worked.
Okay, but you also said that some people just don't come back, so you don't know.
That's always true, but many herbalists have people not come back.
Yeah.
But the skin in the game is professionalism. So I agree. I think that something connects people that they want to do it again. And so often it's money, like you pay for something and you want to continue that.
Right.
Or you just have insurance and you have to do this.
Right.
But I think for the free clinic, one of the things that makes people want to come back is that it's kind of it is professional. Like there's an office, you talk to a receptionist, you might see a nurse.
Yeah.
And I think the professionalism of it makes more people come back than if I was just like me in my home. Because I know lots of herbalists that do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they'll do like a home visit or something like that.
A lot of them have offices in their homes.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so you have to meet with Fido the dog, and then kind of go into this back door.
Usually they leave the back door is correct. Often they leave the dog out of it. So that part's interesting. And then, the doctors. So we always wanted to have an integrated free clinic, since the beginning. And that's actually still 16 years later, it's still like, how do we make this really integrative? Like so often I think of this place as a mixed modality clinic, meaning that you can come here, because the patients choose. The patients can see an acupuncturist, a massage therapist, but integrative means that we would share information together and then come up with plans. So we started doing that with a chronic care program. It's now on a downhill part, and COVID altered so many things, altered that. But that's more, it's usually me, a nurse practitioner, sometimes an acupuncturist, sometimes a nutritionist. And then certain people, depending, like there's a list of characters or a list of health issues that get put right into the chronic care program. That way, they'll see me, they'll see a nurse practitioner, they might see an acupuncturist, and then we can follow their progress and make decisions on what we think would be best for them.
Right, exactly. And so you could say, even if you met with those folks, that you could say, well, you don't need an acupuncturist, but you can meet with these two folks, and just seeing what is best for that person. Well, that just seems really sensible, because everybody's body is different, and everybody's conditions are different, everybody's history is different, that it just makes sense that it just becomes more catered to that person.
Yes, sensible is not a part of our medical system. So just to say this really clearly, I think modern medicine, conventional medicine, is amazing. Like I'm just like, so many people's lives I know are saved by surgery, maybe radiation, chemotherapies, and other forms. Like so many people I know. And so there's a few things to say about that. But the system is a piece of shit, right? Our medical system in the United States, some people in other countries, in Northern Europe, for instance, have much better medical systems. Like the medicine is actually very good in the United States because of the money paid out. And so that's why, you know, here's a weird irony. In a sense, so free clinics are common in the United States. If you go to other countries often, there's no free clinics because there's no need for a free clinic. And so in a sense, we, the free clinic, support this terrible healthcare system that costs so much. So we have a place where people drop through the holes and then come here, where it's none of us existed.
Right.
It might change the system, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
right?
But I would say maybe, I hate to say the word selfish, but for the lack of a better term, for a selfish point of view, this is actually wonderful though for you, because you wouldn't be able to actually practice, as you had mentioned before,
That's correct.
You wouldn't be able to practice in the regular system, you know, here. So you actually get like clinical chops and experience
exactly right.
by working in a place like this and having this as an opportunity as well, from a personal standpoint.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so here's one, then we're going to take this to the next level, which makes it weird. So herbalists have so I run an herb school, and so many of the herbalists, the people who leave my school eventually want to become jobs as clinical herbalists. Clinical herbalist just means that you see people professionally, right? Or whatever that's called.
Yeah.
What it means is that you see strangers, right? Because most of us have always seen like the people around us, but when you start to see strangers, the interaction is very different. So what's the problem? So as a herbalist who practices, so I'm well known in the community as an herbalist, right? Because I'm old enough and been around long enough. So the fact that I practice free makes herbal medicine look like it should be free.
Right.
And so if you're like so I run an herb school and that supports me, right? So I have a job within
And I'm assuming this is like a nonprofit and they accept, you know, donations and everything for people to do this, because our system is so shoddy that this is an option for people and there's no really other option because those people fall through the cracks.
Right, but so I guess though the point is like me doing it for free makes people not want to pay people who they want their livelihoods to be herbalists.
I see, yeah.
So basically, there's a lot of people that would, you know, who would like to do this as a full-time job.
Of course.
And then you know.
You ruined it.
I am ruining it a little bit. It's true. I mean, I'm not going to change it. It's like what you said previously. Like, this is still an amazing place, and lots of people who never try herbs would do this. But it a little bit invalidates other people who want to make a livelihood from it. So that part's tricky.
I feel like yes and no. I mean, I know people's perception is reality. But the reality is you need to step back and say, why does the free clinic exist in the first place?
Right.
And then it's like, well, you know, the reason why it exists in the first place is because we have this system and we have really unaffordable health care, and our health care system is like more like disease care system. So, you know, the fact that then you are a part of this to offer people an opportunity. It's not as if you could be a clinical herbalist and charge people as well. And I would venture to say that some people would pay you separately, and not everybody would come to the free clinic. Like, you know, if I felt ill, maybe I wouldn't come to the free clinic, and maybe it's because it's one, you have restricted hours, or two, or whatever, but maybe I would go to you in your normal practice if you had a normal practice from that. But as you said, you're doing your herbal school, so that's how you kind of, you know, separate and partition your time and support yourself. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's just about perception, you know, sometimes.
I agree. I guess so for me, it's just philosophical, right? So there's this big picture of like, the thing that I do, who does it support? How does it support? And so it's supportive in some ways. In other ways, it allows a terrible system to maintain itself. So
let's step back and get a bit more from if I were to come to the free clinic, how does it work? So I'm somebody, I feel a little ill, I want to actually try, herbal medicine, or I deem that that's something that's interesting to me. So I come to the free clinic, or
You would call the free clinic. So you would call or email the free clinic, because if you came in, they would make an appointment for you, and I'm probably not, unless it's like it's Thursday and I have an open spot, you're not going to be there. So what would happen is you would email or call the free clinic. If you were local, you would come in for an appointment, or if you felt safe, you would come in for an appointment. If you were far away or you were nervous about COVID, you would still do it. So since COVID, so pre-COVID, occasionally we did phone calls, but pretty rare. So now we do a lot of online. I do a lot of online. We all do online, in person, and sometimes phone calls. Sometimes people just don't have the tech power to, So anyway, you would write an email, and then you would talk to Luz, our clinic coordinator, and she would set you up with an appointment. It would be a Thursday, well, in this time of the year, but in the winter months different, between 3 and 7. And if it was your first time, you would get an hour appointment. If it was more than your first time, you would have a half-hour appointment. You would be in the waiting room. You'd fill out paperwork. You'd be in the waiting room. I would come out with nothing in my hand. I'm used to still the paper folders I used to come out. But we've been electronic records for 3 years now.
Yeah.
So I'd go to the waiting room and I'd say, Barbara, is there a Barbara here? Barbara would come up. I would say, hi, Barbara, my name's Seven Song. And then I would say, I have 2 students in the room. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Probably about 98% of the people are comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And I start asking them questions. So usually it starts off, hi, Barbara, have you ever used herbal medicine before? A lot of people are like, I've heard of herbal medicine, I haven't used herbal medicine. Then I'll say, are you interested in me explaining it? And I do a very quick summary. Also, I explain who I am. So many herbalists are very spiritually oriented, and I'm not. So some people come, and that's a problem, like they come here because they think that the spirituality and herbal medicine are somehow entwined, and they are for some people.
I think that's the same for like yoga, for instance, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for me, it's just, so I just
You're
want
like,
to...
no, I got tight hamstrings. Sorry.
Yeah, no, then I'll just say, I'm more of a medical person, I'd be interested in your lab reports. In the end, most people feel pretty comfortable about that because it's we are used to medical people that they look at lab reports, they look at test results, and they ask specific questions. The difference is the questions that I'm going to ask. Yeah. Since herbal medicine, the way I practice it, is generalized, right? So it's more like a family practitioner, except a family practitioner, if they hear one thing, they might say, time for the rheumatologist or the nephrologist. So I go over them, and sometimes if they have labs, we'll look at their labs since we share records. Each clinic shares its own records. Yeah.
Well, I think sorry to interject, but I think that's actually a really nice transition point because for some people who might not be on that spiritual side of herbalism as well, right. It's kind of like I'm used to this kind of experience with my doctor, or this is what I see on TV or something, and then it kind of is a nice dip into herbalism, for instance. I
think most people, I think that's true. I think there's a comfort for it. So the discomfort is the questions we ask, and also kind of it's more laid back. I think it's just, some doctors have a very nice, like kind of ambiance to their room, but often it's like quick and fast, and so there's a tightness. Yeah. So I work with doctors, and I like a lot of doctors. I am not anti-doctor. Yeah. But I think the situation, and they're stuck in it, right? Because they have to, to fill out the insurance forms, the amount of people they have to see in order to make things work is terrible. Yeah. Some of them really, if you talk, some of them really like working here because for the first time they can see people as long as they want to see them. Right. They're unconstrained by time. That's true. And also, depending where they work, they see different health issues because the people who come here have wide variety of health issues. Often they'll say like, I just see people with, cardiac problems or thyroid problems. Right. So...
Fascinating. So this has been around since you said 2000?
January in 2006.
Wow, it's been a long time
16
here.
16 years.
Wow, amazing. So yeah, I just think the idea and the concept of a free clinic is neat. It's such a wonderful community service, really, to have.
I agree.
It's unusual. So what would be, since you've been here, you started in like some of the first meetings, not maybe the initial meetings, but you saw this kind of come together and materialize. If somebody else is in another community, what do you think it actually really takes to actually get something like this off the ground?
So I know a lot about this because I travel and mostly I meet other herbalists. And so lots of herbalists would love to be involved in a free clinic. This is it's kind of posh for a free clinic, you know? I mean, actually I bought the paint because I got tired. This was the color previously. And too cranberry for me.
That's like raspberry or like sorbet.
But anyway, like as I said, like it has the professionalism, it has the front office, has nurses and doctors. So, but there's a few things that really, that is hard for people to get past. So what I want to say is like for herbalists, how to help work in a free clinic or start a free clinic. Because all this other stuff like renting the building, getting executive directors, like I know a little bit about it, but it's never been my...
Yeah, it's a proper like nonprofit setup. You have, it's
exactly, thank you, all that. So the first thing is you have to have people who live in the community and will stay in the community. Because when I travel, often I'll go to like Portland, Oregon, and I'll have a meeting with people who want to start it. Like they're young, there's nothing wrong with being young, except that often you're not sitting still.
Yeah.
And so it takes at least a year to a year and a half, and then if too many people leave at once, it falls apart. Like you have to have people who are committed, and it's not saying you're committed is different than like, you're in Ithaca for 20 years already, maybe your family's here, like you just live here.
Yeah, and especially with a lot of the younger generation, which is my generation and generation even below me, there isn't this idea like, of staying in a job for ever. You know what I mean? Like this is the thing that I'm going to do for the rest of my life. A lot of people are so are accustomed to like job hopping and like being extremely mobile. It's like part of the lifestyle, if you will. So it's like you almost have to slow down,
Yeah.
And like you said, make that decision to stay here.
And I think it's good it's good to travel and do stuff when you're young because it gets harder when you're older. So I'm pretty pro that. But that's like number one is like people who are stable community members. And often it's older people, frankly, because when you're older, you just move around less. So it's not always true, but it's more often true than if you're in your mid-20s. Number two is compromise. A crazy amount of compromise. All of us, all the time. And so basically, we had a very straightforward goal. We wanted to open a free clinic. I had sub-goals. I wanted herbalists to practice in a free clinic. But so throughout the year of meetings, people would like introduce things. And so we never really followed Robert's rules, or we never did consensus. We tried to just be respectful towards each other. So if somebody had a weird idea, we would listen to it, as long as they seemed committed. Like if they just came in for one meeting, less that. But if they came in for regular meetings and were committed, and so this has been the problem that I see in the herb world trying to start a free clinic. I think that people initially, when they want to start a clinic, they do all what's the word for it? The overall message of an organization.
Like the vision.
Yeah, the
vision or the mission.
The mission statement, thank you.
Yeah.
So like the mission statement. But I think they start with the mission statement. And the problem is, if you just try to adhere to it often, you run into conflict. Because somebody's like, this wording is not good, or we can't do this because it excludes. Like everybody here wanted to be inclusive. Everybody wanted to be open to everybody. But there still has to be compromises in how you go about things. But those are really, I think, if you can do that, you have people that are committed and willing to compromise. You have a very, very simple, strong goal, which is the free clinic gets open.
You have to there's that kind of mission statement, but there's the practicalities of it. And I think with mission statements, you could often get like stuck in the mire because there are protocols. There's protocols and like things that you need to kind of just follow and everything. And if you get too caught up in the clouds, then things sometimes just don't get done.
Exactly. Well, I think that's very common. It's not just healthcare clinics. I think it's very often people have really good ideas and want to do things, and then you start the art of compromise.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you, and I absolutely love the concept of this. And we see people were coming in and going and everything along those lines, and even the bus driver on the way over.
You got to see the herbs.
Oh, I'd love to see the herbs. Yeah.
So the one thing that's different or weird here, the whole situation is a little bit like who I am and herbalists, But the thing that we've said why people don't come back is because the medicines are not what are different.
Well, you have to have a lot of storage.
Right?
I
finally got a.
And they're like, ew, this tastes bad.
And it does. It all tastes bad.
Yeah.
So, for instance,
unless you put a lot of licorice in it.
and lots of people hate licorice.
Yeah, that's
not
true.
Not if they're from the Netherlands. The Netherlands people are crazy for licorice. So, like, these are our tinctures here, and then these are glycerides for people who can't. We have a lot less of them.
Oh yeah, so no alcohol or anything.
Yeah, because there's lots of people.
Yeah. Very cool.
And then wait, and our new cabinet, which is the prettiest. Well, these are the newest ones. And then raw herbs for tea. And then my home has storage. So the one thing about herbal medicine that I don't know if people think about is it takes up a lot of room.
A lot of space, yeah.
Like, this is just a very small amount. So half of my house is storage for the clinic.
Yeah.
We go through one more, and then in here we have capsules. And then other stuff as well. French presses to give to people. So, but that's it. I mean, it's been a crazy honor, meaning very positive.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel extremely prideful to be a part of this. First, it doesn't really exist other places. I know very few other herbalists, and I just got lucky. Like, I know that I'm lucky. I lived in a town. Somebody told me to come here. Like, if I lived anywhere else, I wouldn't be a part of this.
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Like how if it kind of you find it and it finds you. And you meet a lot of folks who practice herbalism and everything, and like you said, maybe they practice on themselves, maybe they practice on their friends or family, but to then make that leap into strangers,
it's a jump.
It's a huge jump, and to build that confidence along the way too. So kudos to you, kudos to the folks here who actually have created this space for the community. I think it's just like a brilliant, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Want to see one more interesting thing?
Yeah, sure.
So I went to Standing Rock because I also go to encampments.
Yeah.
So I practice herbal medicine, and I gathered, before I went to Standing Rock, I gathered a bunch of Western white cedar because I was in Seattle. And this is a school kid, a bunch of indigenous kids holding it up and also like doing like whatever kind of
Well, they look like they're dropping an album or something.
They're all hoping they would.
Yeah.
But I mean, herbal medicine, of course, doesn't have to be in a clinic.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think of the concept of a free community-based integrative medical and herbal clinic? Are there ones operational in your community, and how do they work? Let us know in the comments below. And if you find our videos enlightening, do give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to know when the next new videos launch, hit the notifications button while you're at it. Your viewership and support of the channel goes a long way. We commit 10% of our Google AdSense revenues back to great community projects in the Finger Lakes community, which is matched by our partners over at Espoma Organic. So it's just another way to help build strength and support within the community by the community. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next video.